Hey everybody, welcome back. I am down here by the Ottawa River, so filming this in Ottawa. By the time you see it, it's actually going to be Thursday, and I will have the ride will have left Charlottetown this morning, and we would have teed up with the Rolling Barrage last night. We would have rolled the first 100 or so kilometers with them back across Confederation Bridge, and then they peel off and go west, and we peel off and go to the east. And yeah, so that's what should be happening right about now. So yeah, what I wanted to talk about today was social exhaustion. You know, I think we've all experienced that, where we just kind of been peopled out. You know, you're out, you're interacting with people, and after a time, you know, you get tired, you just get exhausted. And I think people in general feel that. I know myself, I could feel that very, very intensely. And I want to talk a bit about why that is, or why it is for me, or why I feel it is that way for me. You know, I talked before about being numbed out and being guarded, and, you know, the fact that I spent a lot of time hiding the fact that I wasn't well, that I was injured. And that definitely leads, that'll be kind of that first part of that social exhaustion. As you're out interacting with people, and especially as I was out interacting with people while I was still serving, while I was very worried about the fact that, you know, me having PTSD was going to get me released from the forces, you know, lose my job. That social exhaustion really comes from the fact that all those interactions you're having with people, you're hiding something. And you know, and it's not intentionally, not maybe so that you're hiding a big thing from them, but it's just that being on your guard all the time and being aware of what you say. And I guess that really boils down essentially to the whole thing of social exhaustion, and why those personal interactions take so much out of you. So there's that being guarded part, and I definitely felt that when I was serving, and I especially felt that after I changed from the infantry to become an imagery technician, from the infantry to become an imagery technician, and that environment changed, and I had to be so much more guarded, mostly because I was kind of amped up all the time, and really trying to hide that. The other thing that comes is, you know, what I've found since releasing, and since being involved in school, so where I'm around a lot of people, you know, and going into the workplace would be the same thing. You know, you're around people, and completely out of my element, completely out of the military environment. I'm now in a school environment, and not used to it. And there's a lot of filtering. And I'm not talking about, you know, horrible things, you know, worried about blurting out horrible things most of the time. there may actually be a component of that. No, but what I'm talking about is being aware of how I interact with people, and being aware that my personality, there were those in the forces who found it overbearing. So I can only imagine what somebody who doesn't have any background in that probably finds. And I find I worry a lot about just kind of steamrolling over people. You know, and that was maybe different before, because that was kind of a way of operating before. You know, I talked about that intensity, and, you know, and that ownership of everything, and you know, default aggressive and being assertive. That was a way of dealing with things back in the infantry. And then I found when I became an imagery technician, that I wasn't appreciated so much. And within the civilian world, definitely, you know, I cannot carry on in the civilian world. I could not carry on in that classroom the way I did in uniform, and especially not the way I did in, you know, an infantry training establishment or within the infantry. Like, it just wouldn't fly. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, that's completely normal. But I find I have to filter it, and there's times that I have to filter in, you know, that ex-infantry instructor kind of attitude and approach to things. I do find that kind of, every now and again, you know, I want to let that guy off the chain. So there's, you know, managing that, internalizing that, and filtering that. But there's also just filtering reactions to small personal interactions. and reactions to, things that I see as, okay, this isn't quite right. And, if I were to look at that through the lens of being a serving member of the armed forces, that would be something maybe to be upset about. But in the civilian world, it isn't. And that exhaustion comes from constantly trying to pick those things apart and to be mindful, always being mindful of what's going on around me, what my reaction to it is, and is that appropriate? Is it not appropriate? And this was really difficult, early last year, September, October. I had a really hard time with this because it was constant and it was exhausting. It was nonstop. And what I came to find over time, the more I started to kind of open up to people around me, and the more they opened up to me, was that, a lot of my reactions weren't inappropriate. A lot of my perceptions weren't inappropriate. Tempering some of those reactions, surely, was the right thing to do. But I'm not totally off base in my assessment of things when I go, hey, this doesn't seem quite right. And it's good. It's good to be able to make that connection with people, and it's good to be able to find that common ground. But it can still be really exhausting. And there are certainly times where I find I am being careful of how much I share about previous experiences. I still find I'm being careful of trying not to be sitting around telling war stories all friggin' day, or trying to step over top of people, or trying to, that whole step up and take charge thing is great, but it's not always appropriate. And, I am wary of just not crushing people, and that still does get exhausting. Now, there's other times where that filtering and that internalization kind of gets extreme. And I know when I was really struggling last fall, there were a couple of days where I ended up that I couldn't even drive. I had to stop, pull over, and actually straight up have a nap at 4 in the afternoon after leaving school, because I didn't trust myself to drive. I was so amped up. And looking back now, I'm beyond those reactions to that stimulus, which is awesome. It happened a few times. Again, those early stages, it was rough, and it was something that I really had to work my way through. And I'm glad to have been out the other side of it, because honestly, I was at that cusp of leaving school. I was at the cusp of saying, nah, this can't work, and I don't belong here, and I just gotta go. I just can't be here. But I did. I fought through it, and looking back, it'd be easy to laugh it off and say, wow, that was kind of ridiculous. But no, it makes total sense that trying to find your way in this new world, and constantly being aware and constantly filtering, and how exhausting that is. So, there were definitely some extreme reactions there. There have definitely been 2 times that I can think of where I've had severe reactions in the presence of other people and just internalized it, and just kind of choked it in. And one was, I was out driving with two classmates. I wasn't driving, I was in the back seat, and the girl driving, she came up to a T intersection, and for whatever reason, I was sitting in the back seat, and she's about to make a left turn, and I just got this feeling like something bad was going to happen. Something real bad was going to happen. And I did. I kind of yelled, and I scared the shit out of her, I think. And, I kind of passed it off as a joke, I'm kidding, or whatever, because I was embarrassed. Nothing did happen, It was just this moment of just feeling completely out of control and completely vulnerable, and just like something bad. Yeah, something bad's coming down. And yeah, I straight up yelled. I straight up tried to pass it off as, aha, just kidding. Yeah, I gotcha. No, not at all. I was all kinds of fucked up at that moment. And another time was during wilderness first responder training, and the instructor, Scott Hembrough, was a friend of mine. He was sharing some stories, and he was sharing some heavy stuff, and he was doing it to share the gravity of some of the things that we as wilderness first responders, you know, once we were qualified after that, might encounter. And of course, I know the sort of things I'm going to encounter. I know of them for sure. But he shared some of his stories, and it's just as a warning, and it just as a you know, to bring awareness to it for some of these folks who haven't experienced anything like that this might be something they come up against. And man, I had a reaction. I was this close to completely breaking down right there in that classroom in front of, you know, 14 or 15 of my peers. And I didn't, you know, I just bottled it up. I just internalized it. I just choked it down. And because I'm still not past that, being embarrassed about having those reactions. And it's all well and good, you know, I can share things here. I can break down a little bit here on camera. But this is controlled. This is contrived. I'm not saying the emotions aren't genuine. I'm not manufacturing anything, but I'm moving myself into a headspace before I do this. I mean, there's a battle procedure, right? And I've spoken to this with a friend of mine who kind of, you know, said, "Oh, it's great that you're so open and, you know, you're not guarded anymore and everything else." And I said, "Well, you know, don't entirely buy everything you see on camera. The simple fact is, and it's odd, is that I can be more open and communicative here, and I can allow myself to experience more emotions here, knowing that this is going to be posted publicly, than I can with people who are close to me, right, you know, face to face, with the exception of those people who've been there and done that. So being in a room full of people who didn't share that experience, and again, it's no judgment on them, I found myself having a severe reaction and just fighting like hell to choke it in. And I remember going home that night, you know, that afternoon, and just passing out. I was just done. I was completely spent. And you know, when that internalization and that filtering constantly takes so much more energy than you think it would. And I think I've shared this example before, just to talk about internalization, but I was driving back from down east back to Meaford, Ontario, and stopped at a gas stop, and an older gentleman backed his car into mine and caused a significant amount of damage. And I remember feeling like I was losing my shit. I was so over the top angry. And, you know, this guy was real good about it. He said, "You know what? I've never had an accident. This is the first time. That was entirely my fault. You know, don't worry about it. I'll look after it, you know, through my insurance." And, you know, within 20 minutes we had it resolved. The car was good enough to drive. Everything was okay. Nobody was hurt. And I was embarrassed. I was so fucking embarrassed. And I shook his hand and I said, "Listen, sir," you know, and again, an elderly gentleman. I said, "Listen, I am so sorry for the way I acted, and I'm so sorry for the way I reacted." And I remember the look on his face. He kind of like, what do you, I don't even know what you mean, you know? But I internalized, like I was in an absolute rage, and I internalized it, and to the point where, yeah, I felt it. I felt that so severely. I felt like he had to feel it too. You know, but yeah, that's, you know, sorry, it's kind of meandering today. It was a morning. It was a morning visiting that Afghan memorial. And, you know, but I'm sure I'm not the only one who feels that, you know, that social exhaustion from filtering and internalizing reactions and emotions. But yeah, hopefully this sheds a bit of insight, and yeah, we'll leave it with that today. So left Charlottetown this morning, as long as everything's gone according to plan, and we will be in Cheticamp tonight, and then getting ready to make our way down the Cabot Trail tomorrow, and on the boat to Newfoundland. So yeah, this shit is happening. Hopefully you're following along. The post goes up every morning with the link to the GPS tracker to the Find Me spot. And every evening the night before the ride, the route details go up and timings. If you're able to come out and join us, either come say hello, come join us to ride for a little bit, or even better, if you're a veteran or first responder and you have a story to share, come share it with us and we'll find some time to sit down and have a chat. If you're willing to sit in my shoes here now and kind of do this. But I want to also say a big thank you to, there are a whole bunch of people who donated to the GoFundMe page. So myself and Frank and Paul had to raise $1,500 in order to be a part of this ride, in order to go on the ride. And we managed to hit that goal last night, which would be, Friday the 2nd of August being last night. And I just want to thank everybody for supporting us with that. And a huge thank you to Bombshell Stella's, because Bombshell Stella's, through their fundraising efforts, through the Bomb the Bruce ride, through their grand opening, they managed to raise, I think $1,200 of that, if not more. So yeah, it was awesome to have that sort of support. And there was also been support in terms of branding and promotion that hasn't been shown on that total yet, but I'll be adding that as well. And yeah, so a huge shout out to Heather Morris and Bombshell Stella's for getting us here, and for the incredible support that they've shown to Military Minds Inc. and to the Dispatches ride. So guys, I'm gonna leave you with that, and right about now I should be twisting a throttle somewhere just between like Tatamagouche and Antigonish, and I'm sure I'm loving it. So I'm gonna leave you with that, guys, and we'll see you next Thursday. Bye.